I have the great honor of kicking off our new series, The Struggle is Real. And man, the struggle is real, y'all. The struggle is real. We're going to be talking about technology and the struggle of technology. And I wanted to look at some of my biggest struggles with technology. And I think we can all agree, number one, it makes us way too accessible. I mean, way too accessible. Right? So you gotta have like a built-in out. If your phone's already dying, as soon as they call, you can hang up at any moment. And problem is, everyone's a detective these days. So, you say your phone's about to die, and then what do? They're checking the icons. Well, why is your Facebook, icon green? Why are you on there posting? Why are you messaging other people? But I think we could all agree that the biggest struggle when it comes to technology is when your phone dies, right? You run out of juice, and then you end up looking like this guy, just sitting with your legs crossed out in public, like, okay, what do I do now? Everyone else is having a good time, and my phone's dead. But really, I think it's probably not the worst thing if our phone dies, right? Because it allows us to enjoy nature maybe a little bit. We get to appreciate God's creation. I just love it because it's so dumb. Because it's a butterfly. It's not a bird. That's the joke. So, I think we can all admit smartphones and the amount of time we spend on them has become a problem. We've all been in rooms or in cars or at dinner tables where people's smartphones are more important than the people around them. And if you think about it, the challenge we face today is unprecedented. There's really no other generation in the history of humanity who has had the same amount of access and secrets and power and information in the palm of their hands at any given moment wherever we go. And this is not going to be a message or a series where we bash on technology, because really technology is not a bad thing. Technology is a tool. It's like a hammer. You can use it to build a house that's never been there before, or you can use it to bash someone's head in. It's just a tool. And one of my favorite tools that's really come out just recently are these little things. These are called AirPods. And let me tell you about AirPods real quick. So the cool thing about AirPods is you can take them, you can put them in your ears, and this case right here can recharge your AirPods like 5 or 6 times. So you just charge it up once. It can give a 90% charge in 15 minutes, and you can be back at it. You can listen. It has little microphones in it. You can have conversations through the microphones in your AirPods, so you don't have to have your phone close by. You can skip tracks just by tapping the side of the AirPods. You can, put them in and use it. Like when you wanted to go work out back in the day, you had the cords all hanging all over you. It's getting caught and it's pulling and it's ripping out of your ear. You don't have to deal with that anymore with AirPods, right? It's an amazing tool, an amazing invention. But a few months ago, I went to bring pizza to some of my students at Westerville Central and do lunch together with them. And we show up there to have lunch, and while we're sitting there talking, I notice a couple of our girls are sitting on their phones, and they both have their headphones in. And I was a little surprised. I was like, man, when I was in school, there was no way on earth you would be allowed to bring your headphones to school. Right? There's no way you're allowed to wear headphones. So I asked them, I said, hey, what's going on? I noticed both of you are wearing headphones. Do you normally bring headphones to school? And they said, yeah, everybody wears headphones. If you don't wear headphones, then you feel alone. I was like, man, that's crazy. A couple of weeks ago, Betty told me this really funny story about how she went to New York City. And you guys know how crazy packed New York City is. And she went in for lunch and to this restaurant. The restaurant was packed. And she sat down to eat at a table by herself. And while she was sitting there, a woman came up to her and said, hey, is this seat across from you taken? And she said, no, it's not. You can sit there. She said, okay, great. So she sat down. And Betty's thinking she's about to make a new friend, right? She's about to make a connection. But before she could even get a word out, the lady's pulled out her headphones. And she's in her phone, and Betty sat there and had an entire meal sitting across from a stranger without uttering a word to each other. See, for all the good uses of AirPods or phones, really, it's like a tool that we use because we like control. It's become the universal sign for don't talk to me, right? I have my AirPods in. It's not that I'm even listening to music. I want to put them in just so I don't have to deal with interacting with people. I don't want to have a conversation. I don't want to hear what you have to say. My AirPods could be dead, but I could still have them in my ears. And instead of developing community and social skills and the ability to cope and the art of storytelling, it's so easy now to reach for our phones, reach for our AirPods, put them in, and just say, leave me alone. We like to have control. But look at what Paul says about having control or getting your way all the time in Galatians 5. He says it's obvious what kind of life develops out of trying to get your own way all the time. Repetitive, loveless, cheap sex, a stinking accumulation of mental and emotional garbage, frenzied and joyless grabs for happiness, skipping ahead here, paranoid loneliness, cutthroat competition. I want to skip forward a little bit more just down to those last couple. Uncontrolled and uncontrollable addictions, and ugly parodies of community. Now, I want to zero in on that last phrase, ugly parodies of community. Because that word parody means to take something that's serious and make a joke out of it. So, a good example of a parody would be Spaceballs to Star Wars, right? You take something serious and you make a joke out of it. You have 007 and you make Austin Powers, right? It's a parody. You take something serious and you make a joke out of it. But in this instance, it's an ugly parody of community. So I think a better example of an ugly parody would be something like Michigan Wolverines to college football, right? It's ugly parody. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to watch that. But what we want here at Chapel is we want real community. So in this series, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at what we're calling the 10 Commandments of Community to help us navigate these waters where technology is so intertwined with our everyday life. And it's so easy sometimes to end up with the ugly parody instead of the real thing. And this week, I'm going to get to kick us off by looking at the first 3 commandments and specifically focusing on excess. And this is what we're going to commit to live as our church lives, our digital lives together as a church. So here we go. Commandment number 1 of community. Make technology your servant and not your master. Make technology your servant and not your master. I'd like everyone to stand up, please. And pull out your cell phones. Everyone, if you have a smartphone, please pull it out. If you have an iPhone, I'd like for you to open up your settings. Android, open up your settings. And on iPhone users, after you open up your settings, I want you to open up screen time. So scroll down to screen time, okay? Some of you might know where I'm going on this. If you're an Android user, you can open up, what I saw was well-being. It's well-being is what's under your settings. It's the same thing as screen time for Apple. Now, when you open it up, if you've never looked at this screen before, you might be a little surprised by some of the numbers you're seeing right now, okay? Because these apps, the Screen Time app on iPhone, tracks how much time you spend on your phone every day. Now, it'll show you, if you just open it up right now, it'll show you what you spent so far today, but there's a little spot where you can click and see how much time you spent on average in the last 7 days. All right? So I want you to look at your last 7-day average. Okay? If you've never seen this before, again, you might be a little surprised. It'll track how much time you spent. It'll track how many times you pick up your phone every day, how many push notifications you get every day. Okay? Now here's what we're going to do. If you don't have a smartphone, go ahead and sit down. If you have no idea what I'm talking about or you cannot find what I'm talking about, go ahead and sit down. The rest of you, here we go. We're going to pull back the curtain a little bit. I'm going to ask you for some honesty here. If your time on your phone is less than 1 hour per day, go ahead and sit down. If your time on your phone is less than 3 hours per day, sit down. Sorry. All right, less than 5 hours per day, sit down. Less than 7 hours per day. All right, less than 8 hours. All right. So, hey, we're not throwing stones here. We're not casting judgment, right? Because Maybe they work a lot. They have to be on their phone. They have the Maps app open. They're sending emails. Who knows? The point of this is, man, we spend a lot of phone in front of our devices, a lot of time in front of our devices. We don't even realize how much time we're spending. I was mortified the first time I saw my screen time report. It told me I spent about 5.5 hours a day. I was like, I need to get a second full-time job. What am I doing with my life? It said I was picking up my phone 100 times a day, just checking it. Boom, boom. I was getting over 250 push notifications a day. Those push notifications, man, they're like a slave master, just cracking the whip, right? Pick me up. Look at me. Give me your attention. You feel that vibration on your wrist. You feel the vibration in your pocket. You start feeling ghost vibrations. You're like, did I feel something? Like, do I need to? Oh, there's nothing. Okay, Man. And this is the struggle that you and I have. And then your phone dies and you start getting that little itch, like, hey, somebody give me a little juice, can you give me a little hookup? Like, hey, Kyan, it's me. It's Robby. Like, can you give me? Okay, thank you. I'm good for it. I'll get you back. Just give me a little juice. Right? You start getting that little itch. That time we spend on our phones, man, we need to make technology our servant and not our master. So I want for all of us here to say moderation. Moderation. We need to set limits, right? Moderation, no one likes to say the word moderation or talk about moderation. Moderation's not sexy. No one's like, ooh, I like how you never go too far. I like how you never let yourself go. Right, that's so hot. No, everyone, moderation, it's not good, but it's not sexy. It's not hot, but it's wise. And here's what I want to say on this. Psalm 90:12. Look at this. This is David. He says, so teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Man, the well-being app, the screen time app, sometimes it's good to look at these things, right? Because it helps us number our days. So let's number our days. If you're to live to your 90, which is a great long life, that's approximately 33,000 days, which is 790,000 hours. But if you sleep 8 hours a day, that's a third of your time, so you really only have 22,000 days. Or 525,000 hours. That doesn't seem like a whole lot for an entire lifetime. And then you take out time, you're sitting on the toilet, showering, right? Take out time that you work 8 hours a day or you're in school. And our lives are cut down to maybe 11,000 days of waking time that we can really spend and invest in ourselves freely. When you have a tight budget and you're trying to save for something or you're really trying to manage your money well, you look at the best money managers. What do? They check their budget every week. They sit down every month. They go in depth. They say, how much did I spend this week on groceries? How much did I spend this week on gas? How much did I spend this week on entertainment, on the house, right? Because if you want to be a good steward of your money, you have to take an account of it regularly. How much more should we take an account of our time when it's something that you can always get more money, but you can't get more time? How are we doing when it comes to counting our days, numbering our days? Those 250 push notifications I'd get? That was one push notification for every 4 waking minutes for me. Like a slave master. Look at me. Pay attention to me. So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. I would say, number one, the first thing you could do that would be very easy if you want to cut down the amount of time you spend on your phone is really go in, and this is what I did. I went through and turned off push notifications for a bunch of my apps in my phone because I don't need to know what the president tweeted, right? Every couple of hours. I don't need to know that somebody just left home and they averaged so many miles per hour. I don't need to know, it's about to rain in 20 minutes in Westerville when I'm in Alexandria. I don't need to know all this stuff. So I'd really encourage you, go in, turn off some of your push notifications. Commandment number 2, honor the digital Sabbath and keep it holy. Honor the digital Sabbath and keep it holy. Facts. We are more overworked, overstressed, anxious, restless, and out of sync than ever before. And this isn't me preaching to you. This is me sitting down in the seat next to you. We need to slow down. We need to break the cycle. And you think about it, smartphones have undone in only a few short years what it took union workers to fight for decades to get, right? Clear work-home boundaries. They fought long and hard to get those things. And now you have access to work 24 hours a day. It is so hard to get unplugged. If you're a business owner, it is impossible sometimes to get unplugged. It's impossible to get away from the busyness and the craziness. We're all so busy. I have to be here. I have to take the kids there. I have to call them back. I have to work on the house. I have to work on myself. I have to work on my marriage. I have to work on my family. I love these two quotes that talks about busyness and hurry. This one says, hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your day. Not God. You and I are the ones that need to work on how busy we're going to be. And this next quote says, hurry is not the devil. Hurry is the devil. If he can't get us to abandon our faith, he will get us so distracted and so busy that we never give any time to it. Hurry. Michael Zigerly surveyed 20,000 North American Christians and found that the number one biggest distraction is busyness. To put it another way, the number one biggest distraction to Christians is this. We're just so busy. We're so caught up. And if Satan's other weapons won't work against you, where he can maybe rob you of your faith or rob you of your passion for God, he'll pull out his big guns. He'll pull out his WMDs, weapons of mass distraction. And he'll do whatever he can to keep you busy and hooked in and locked in and synced in to this and missing out on what's going on right next to you or right across from you. Busyness is not of the devil. It is the devil. In Matthew 13, Jesus tells a parable of the soil and the sower. And he gives an analogy of how the seed the sower throws is the word of God. And he says some of the seed falls on the path. And that represents someone who, the enemy, the birds come and it eats up the seed before the seed can take root. Talks about how Satan will go in and steal maybe the word of God for your life. And then he goes on to say some of the seed fell on the rocks. And the rocks didn't have any depth, so the seed couldn't get any depth. It didn't get any roots. So when it got hot out, when the troubles of life came, it scorched the plants and the plants died. And then he says some of the seed fell on the thorny soil. Now, I would venture to say if any of the soil, you and I are the thorny soil. And the American church is the thorny soil, and here's why. Look at what it says in Matthew 13:22. As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches, what happens? Chokes it out. Chokes out the word. The cares of this world. Weapons of mass distraction. Oh, that's a really good message. What am I going to do for lunch today? The president tweeted, what? She's dating who? They're traveling where? Weapons of mass distraction. The cares of this world. Choking out God's word for our lives. And this is what Paul is talking about in Romans 8. He says, for to set the mind, everyone say, set the mind. On the flesh is death, but to set the mind, everyone say, set the mind. On the spirit is life and peace. You and I, we have to set our minds. Listen, there's so many things that are vying for our attention, that are saying, listen to me, look at me, give me your time, give me your attention. And you and I, we're not passive creatures. We have to set our minds. It's up to you and I. We have to determine, what am I going to give my attention to? What am I going to set my mind on? What am I going to focus on? If I want his life in peace, then I have to set my mind on his Spirit. And there are two practices that are more important now than ever if we want our minds to be governed by the Spirit. That is solitude and silence. Solitude and silence. Now more than ever before, that is hard to find. Man, if you have kids, good luck. I mean, I even sleep with the fan on. When I get in the car, first thing I want to do, listen to sports radio, listen to music. But solitude and silence is so important. If we want to set our minds on the things of the Spirit, if we want to hear the voice of God, God doesn't speak in a shout, does he? He speaks in a whisper. We need solitude and silence. And if we don't stop and listen, how do we know what is ruling our minds? Romans 12 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Transformed by the renewing of your mind means to be transformed from the inside out by setting your attention on God. Are you having a difficult time determining God's will for your life? How is your practice in solitude and silence going? Are you setting your mind on the Spirit? Are you fixing your attention on God? And this is where we need to honor the digital Sabbath. We need to set aside time each day where we say, I'm not going to pick this up. First thing in the morning, my alarm goes off. I'm not going to pick this up. I'm not going to check Facebook first. I'm not going to check Instagram first. I'm not going to check what bad news happened while I was sleeping first. Maybe the way you can honor the digital Sabbath is when you say that you're going home each night. For an hour each day, you just put your phone down, you put it away, and you're present, you're in the moment with your family, you're in the moment with your loved ones. At the dinner table, every night, you say no phones, no phones. That's a rule at our house, no phones at the table. You leave it somewhere else, you put it away, do not pull it out. Maybe you say, I need to spend more time with my spouse. But all we do before we lay in bed is we both plug in our phones and we lay and we look at our phones for 30 minutes, an hour plus. Maybe that's where you say, I'm going to honor the digital Sabbath. I'm going to honor my spouse. I'm going to honor my family. I'm going to put some boundaries. I'm going to choose to moderate. I'm going to choose to set my mind. And if you'll honor the digital Sabbath and set your mind on the Spirit, you'll be amazed at how your mind is renewed. You'll be amazed. And then our third commandment for today is this. Remember that who you are in God matters more than who you are online. Who you are in God matters more than who you are online. In March, we got to take some of our students to this conference called Love is Red, which is really an incredible time that a couple thousand students go every year, and it's awesome. And each of those days, they have these breakout sessions that the students can attend, and there's different breakout sessions for different interests and different needs. One of the breakout sessions they did both days, and it was the only breakout session. That was one on anxiety and depression. And it was done both days because there was such a high demand for it. And it wasn't just done both days, but both days the session was packed to capacity and they had to turn students away. The breakout session on anxiety and depression. And when I saw that, it was a light bulb moment for me. The struggle is real for this generation. The struggle is real. This generation of students and youth, the battles that they face, the burden that they bear, is greater than any other generation before it. You used to be able to get away from the bullies by going home. Now, you leave and the bullies follow you home to online. One slight, one mess up, one mistake, can be relived for hours, days, weeks, years. You used to be able to just focus on getting good grades. Now you have to get good grades. You have to do the extracurriculars. You have to maintain your image. You have to maintain your online image. You have to have the perfect Instagram, the perfect photos, the perfect filters. It's exhausting. Research shows there is a sharp correlation between an increase in smartphone use and depression in teenagers. And as one increased, so did the other. A professor of psychology at San Diego State said the use of social media and smartphones looks directly responsible for the increase in mental health issues today. In 2016, Time magazine wrote about the rise of anxiety and depression amongst teens, and in 2017, the New York Times did the same. Researchers found a sudden increase in teen symptoms of depression and suicide risk factors and suicide rates in 2012, which coincidentally is around the time when smartphones became popular. Other research found that teens who spend 5 or more hours per day on their devices are 71% more likely to have at least one risk factor for suicide. But I would say this is not exclusive to teens. This is something we all struggle with. Someone sent me an article this week that said in a survey of 1,200 millennials, which is older than you think it is. Millennials are anyone from really 18 to 38. We're supposed to be the generation that's social media savvy. In a survey of 1,200 millennials, a third of them said they felt lonely often or always. 27% said they had no close friends, while 22% said they had no friends at all. People are craving community. Somehow we live in the most connected era in human history, yet somehow we are the most disconnected we've ever been. Community's been sacrificed at the altar of the almighty screen, and we've replaced 5 good friends with hundreds or thousands of online friends and followers. We've exchanged liking ourselves for the likes of others. We've replaced face-to-face with Facebook and intimacy with intimacy, and it's making us more disconnected, more anxious, and more depressed than ever. And pastors aren't exempt from it either. You know, a few weeks ago, and I asked Whitney if I could share this story. Whitney went out with some other female leaders and who were a part of this ministry that was just blowing up. It was killing it. And she came home that night, and I was really excited. I was like, hey, I want to hear all about it. Tell me, how did your time go with these women? She said, well, to be honest, I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt out of place. I said, what do you mean you didn't feel like you belonged? You've been a youth pastor for 6 years. She said, well, you know, these girls, they're all young, they're all beautiful, they're all perfect. Their ministries are killing it. One of the girls has 10,000 followers on Instagram. She said, I have 2 kids now. I'm a stay-at-home mom. That's reality. That's reality. I looked at her, I said, babe, well, number one, you have 3 huge fans right here at home. That's all that matters. Right? But also, you can get 10,000 followers easy. If you're a girl, you just post a couple of like swimming suit photos with the right hashtags, and the creepers will find you. I said, we know some people who have millions of followers, and you are 100 times the woman they are. Who you are in God matters more than who you are online. And I think we could take that even a step further. And we can say who you are in God matters more than who you are offline. Who you are in God is really all that matters. And I would say this, who you are matters a lot less than whose you are. Who you are matters a lot less than whose you are. This jersey I'm wearing today, well, it used to be my favorite NBA player until he demanded a trade to the LA Lakers, but Anthony Davis, all right, New Orleans Pelicans. This is a nice jersey. I got it for Christmas. You know, if you want to get it, it's name brand. It's got the Adidas on there. It's got the nice stitching. This jersey, if you want to buy it, it'll probably cost about $100. Now, I started getting online. I was looking, okay, what could I get for maybe an autographed Anthony Davis jersey? Or, how much would it cost to get a game-worn jersey by Anthony Davis? And it's like $2,000 to $3,000 for a game-worn jersey. In 2012, a jersey sold for a record $4.4 million. Super old. Not as nice as this jersey. Didn't have the really intricate stitching. Wasn't just worn in one game. It's probably really had some pit stains on it, to be honest. It was worn for an entire season. It was probably made of a lower quality fabric. It didn't look as good as this. By every measure, by every account, that jersey is not as valuable, not worth the same amount of money as this jersey. It was worn by this slightly overweight, chubby guy, but it's the highest selling jersey of all time. And that's because that guy's name was Babe Ruth. And the reason it's worth $4.4 million is not because it's a nice jersey. It's because of who it belonged to. And whose you are matters way more than who you are. And maybe you're beat up. Maybe you're a little worn out. Maybe you're a little busted and disgusted. Maybe you don't have the same shine and the same glimmer that you had before. But I'm here to tell you today that you are a child of the King and you belong to Jesus Christ. And you have value and you have worth. And listen, as long as you have breath in your body, you are worthy of love. As long as you have breath in your body, you belong to Him. Whose you are matters way more than who you are. So that's what I want to say to us today. Romans 5:8. Here's where we find our worth. But God shows His love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Even when we didn't have our acts together, even when we were messed up, God still loved us, and Christ still died for us. I am worth what I am worth, and you are worth what you are worth, because God created you, and He loves you, and you belong to Him.